Hello. It'll be weird today because normally I teach and other people talk back, and there is no talking back except in the Discord channel, and I can't see that. So, hello. If you can hear me, let me know in the Discord channel, just real quick. I'm pretty sure you could because you heard my music. Awesome. Thank you. All right, let's get started. And you can see the Discord channel. You can actually see yourself in the Discord channel saying, yes, you can hear me in the Discord channel. All right, so today we're going to cover how to create how-tos. And I got my slides up here, and we're going to go through it this way. I have to keep them this size. It's been a long week. So for most of you, I don't know if John's going to chime in here. He might. Talk about showing up. Let me see if he's in here, and I need to promote him. Nope. Okay. So most of you, if you haven't heard already, I was on a cruise last week in the Caribbean. And I was on the cruise, and while I was on the cruise, John did a unscheduled webcast. So we hadn't prepped for it. Deb, who works with me, she put all that together, and they did the webcast on Thursday. So I was able to get some in-room internet, and I sent her a note afterwards, and I was like, Deb, how was the webcast? And she said it was great. It went really well. John just told us too that while Hacking Fest is going virtual, at that point I realized that my vacation was kind of over. And even though I was on a cruise ship, also on that cruise ship, anytime anyone coughed on the cruise ship, we're like, allergies. But I'm not so sure anymore because it's been 5 days and it's not great. So we'll see how that goes. So for those of you getting here, thanks so much for coming to my workshop. It has been quite a week. We were able to put this virtual conference together in just a few days. For the most part, a lot of this was put together over the weekend where we start putting like actual structural things in place with Derek and some of the other team. The first thing I asked Deb to do was make sure that everyone that was going to present this week, trainers and speakers, had good microphones and cameras. And so she went through and did tests with every speaker, every person here, because you all will be forgiving to slides. You will be forgiving to cameras. You will not be forgiving to bad audio. And so the most important thing for us was to make sure that we had good microphones and good audio. And so we checked all that. Anyone that didn't have good audio, we airdropped them essentially from Amazon microphones so that way they could present today and not sound bad. Anyone that you did hear that you're like, oh, audio is kind of bad, I don't think they showed up for the test. So you're here, I'm here, and we're going to talk about how to create how-tos. And essentially, this is just how to get the knowledge that's in your brain out to people so that they can learn from you. Because I've learned so much from others. I believe you've learned a lot from others. I was a teacher for 9 years. I got a chance to stand up in front of classrooms and teach all the things I had learned to others. And I was able to watch them take that information and start doing something with it. And then they started teaching other people as they graduated, got out into the industry. I taught filmmaking at a Full Sail University from 2003 to 2012, so about 9 years. I taught content creation, so producing. At the time, we called it low budget producing because it wasn't millions of dollars, it wasn't hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was what could you produce for $10 or $400 or a couple grand. And so at the time, we called it independent producing or low budget producing. Looking back on it now, all we were doing is creating what people are now making, content-wise and YouTube-wise and everything like that. I will check the questions window, but for the most part, if you have a question, ask in the questions window, which is in the control panel, and I will check that from time to time. I don't have any helpers here today. It's just me, and that's okay. I'd like to thank the 48 of you that showed up here. It's an open workshop, and I really hope you get something out of it in the next 2 hours. So with all that preamble, let's get started. So this is the How to Create How-Tos, sharing your knowledge. Who am I? I am Jason Blanchard. I work for Black Hills InfoSec. You can follow me on Twitter at Banjo Crashland. I am Jason at blackhillsinfosec.com if you need to send me an email. And I used to, if anyone ever met me when I worked at my previous employer, which was the Sands Institute, if you ever met me there, I generally would introduce myself to a giant room full of networks players, and I would say, hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Jason. I work in marketing. And people would be like, and I was like, I know, we suck, right? We do. for the most part. I mean, we don't, but I mean, every email you get, you're like, do I really want to get that email? When I came to Black Hills, I asked John, I was like, can I change my title from marketing to content and community? Because that's really what we do. We create content and we help build a community. And so, yeah, that's what we did. We changed my title from marketing director to content and community director. And the reason why is because marketing feels like I'm trying to get you, it just doesn't feel right. Like, I just don't like marketing. I don't. I like creating content that is useful and beneficial to you and humanity and things like that. And I like creating a community. And if those people choose to give us money at some point, that's awesome. If they don't, that's fine. But I believe in community. I owned a comic book store for a bunch of years, and I'm bouncing around. You're like, you owned a comic book store? You were a teacher? Yeah, I was doing it all at the same time. It's kind of crazy. But I owned this comic book store, and the reason why our comic book store became successful, and we did become very, very successful, is because we built a community. And we would throw a party, and like 300 people would show up and for a comic book store. Like, that was pretty crazy. We would invite nerdcore rappers to come and perform in our parking lot. Like, everything we could do to build community. It even led to a point where we built a bar inside the comic book store that we called the Geek Easy. And the reason why we called it Geek Easy, because it was kind of like a speakeasy that you would have to go through the comic book store to find a secret door that led you to a bar, like this awesome geek bar. And it still exists today. If you do a Google search for the Geek Easy in Orlando and a comic shop in Orlando, that still totally exists. So that's a little bit about me, why I don't like the word marketing anymore. I am a storyteller. I believe I was born to tell stories, and I believe we were all born to tell stories. And so what I would highly recommend is if you go to, and this is going to be the first link that I give you, if you go to YouTube, and if you haven't seen this yet, go to Jason Blanchard DerbyCon. And you will see a talk that I gave, a presentation or presentations because presenting. I gave here. So what this is, and that's a commercial, but what this talk is, and it's a 30-minute talk, is essentially a talk on how to give talks. And it breaks down how human beings like to hear information, because I was a teacher for 9 years. And the greatest thing our university ever did was give every single student a laptop. And at the time, before the laptops, because I can remember what life was like before the students had laptops and what life was like after the students had laptops. Before the students had laptops, you would always hear chatter. And there was constant chatter going on in the classroom. So you're teaching, you have 40, 50, 100 students, and you hear a little bit of chatter. There's a little bit of chatter everywhere. And normally they were talking about, like, you say something and it invokes an idea, and then they turn to the person next to them and they start talking about it. Just like right now, as I'm talking to you, it invokes an idea. You start thinking about college. You start thinking about if you had a laptop in college. Like, as I speak, it starts invoking and triggering ideas in your own head. And so what happened was, prior to the laptops, there was chatter. After the laptops, chatter stopped. And it took a little while for me to understand that maybe like a week or two into the laptops, I would say something and I would hear a student like a few seconds later go, I was like, why are you laughing? He was like, well, what you said was okay. But what he said about what you said was really hilarious. And I was like, what do you mean what he said, what I said? And he's like, oh, I just chatted with him. I was like, sons, you guys are all talking about me with your laptops. So that was a thing that caught me off guard. I was like, so you're all still talking. The greatest thing about giving a room full of students laptops was all of a sudden I had to become better than the world, essentially. Like, if you had the ability to watch YouTube videos or watch anything that you wanted to instead of me, because you're paying to be in a classroom, but you're paying, just like all of you right now, at any time you can choose to click on another tab. You can go watch anything that you want. You can tune me out. And so I have to be better, more interesting than all of that. And so the greatest thing about giving all of the students laptops was that I had to become a better entertainer. I had to be a better speaker, and I had to really dive into why people like to hear information the way they do. And so what I do is I recommend you go to this talk that's currently on your screen, and I hope you can see my screen. I think you can. A presentation or presentations because presenting. And the reason why the title is that is for SEO. If you do a Google search for DerbyCon presentations, I'm one of the first thing that pops up because I do like what I do, because I like messing with people. All right. And when I say messing with people, I like to hack. All right. So let's get back to the presentation. So I am a marketer. I'm a comedian. So I like to practice doing stand-up comedy. I'm funny. If you got a chance to see me at DerbyCon, I was the presenter. I did DerbyCon 2 years, but the last year I got to be I call myself the keynote speaker because I was the first person to speak at the last DerbyCon. But I got to do comedy at DerbyCon. My background's in comic books and filmmaking. Like I've said before, I was a teacher. And so I come from the world of comic books and filmmaking. It was really nice that Ed Scotus, because if you know Ed Scotus, he took a chance on hiring me at Sands. I didn't have any idea how to do cybersecurity. My wife is a hacker. She's the hacker in the family. But at the time, I didn't know anything really about cybersecurity. And Ed Scotus saw my background in comic books and filmmaking, and he's like, yeah, I think that makes sense. So thank you, Ed, for giving me that opportunity. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to ask you, so you got the questions window. Please, for the next minute, tell me what some of your favorite podcasts or blogs or Twitch channels or any of that is. And I just want to take a look in the questions window and take a look at those. Kellen said, Try Guys, Financial Education. Yeah, let me expand this so I can see. Financial Education channel on YouTube. Jocko Podcast. Oh, yeah, Jocko. I've never heard of Try Guys. Keep them coming. So if you're in there, keep them coming. Darknet Diaries. Ooh, that's a really good show. Adam Savage. Nice. Darknet Diaries, another one. For Darknet Diaries, I've started encouraging people who play backdoors and breaches and they don't know how to come up with a scenario, is to go listen to a bunch of Darknet Diaries, and that would give you a good opportunity to learn about storytelling and cybersecurity and coming up with the breaches or the possible scenarios, which is great. Satisfactory stream in, okay. Hardcore history, that sounds interesting. Jason Blanchard reminisces. Nice, thank you, BB. So thanks for that. And the reason why I ask is because all of us consume this stuff. We are consumers of other people's content. And so what I want to start shifting is you going from a consumer to a producer. You know, someone that, you know, you take a look at what Darknet Diaries is doing. You take a look at what Adam Savage is doing. You take a look at the Jocko podcast. You take a look at what other people are doing that are successful. And you say, that's awesome, and I like what they're doing. How can I adapt some of what they're doing into what I want to do or what I want to do to share my knowledge? And so as you keep posting these, they're comedy YouTubers. Yeah. Oh, cool. Try Guys is comedy YouTubers. So the reason I ask you is just because we all consume. We all do. But I want you to start switching over to the thought process of, I'm a consumer, but now I'm going to be a producer. Man, I used to tell my students this, you know, you teach film school, and every person that comes to film school really wants to make the next big TV show, the next big movie, the next, you know, the next thing. They want to be the next Steven Spielberg or the next, that guy from Clerks, Kevin Smith. That's what they aspire to do. And so I remember telling film students that you are the people who follow your dreams. You know, there's a dream that you have and you're following them. And what you do as filmmakers is you produce content. And this is going to sound hard. You produce content for the people who don't. And it's the people who stay at home, they watch TV. And I'm not saying you're not following your dreams. And I'm not saying everyone that's not sitting at home are following their dreams. But really, that's what a lot of us do. We produce content for the people who are afraid to produce content. And I'm not saying everyone needs to be a content producer and all that stuff. Please don't twist my words. But there's a thing that shifting from a consumer to a producer is a different mindset. And I want you to be that kind of person that if you have a dream inside of you right now to have your voice heard or to create something or to share your knowledge, hopefully in this talk, in this workshop, I can help you switch that. Raise your hand if you're shy. And I know I won't be able to see it, and I know you're going to feel weird doing it at home, but raise your hand if you're shy. And I'm going to raise my hand too. I'm a shy person. I know that 10 minutes, people did it in that's cool. They did it in the GoToWebinar panel. I am shy. If you've ever met me, you're like, really? You're shy? I'm like, absolutely. I am shy. 10 minutes before this webcast, this workshop started, my heart was starting to race. And I was like, I don't know if anyone's actually going to show up, and is this going to be interesting? Are they going to pay attention? All that stuff. So I started getting shy. There's a difference between going up on stage. If you've ever got a chance to see me up on stage, it's like I look confident and I look like I'm, know what I'm doing. And then as soon as I get off stage, it's like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, it's nice. There's a difference in that because I'm shy. So if you are shy, if you're at home, if you're thinking about how shy you are, getting over that shyness is really the first part of creating content. It is that first part of internally you think, who is going to care about anything that I have to say? I'm not smart enough, or I'm going to make something and people are going to laugh at it, or I'm going to make something and it's not going to be good. And yeah, that is true. There's going to be people that don't like the things that you make, but you're not making it for them. The first thing if I can teach you today, you're not making something for everybody. You're making something for the people who want the thing that you're making. Hopefully that makes sense, is that if there's 100 people in the room, and right now there's 58 of you in this room, you all showed up here because you wanted to learn this. And so that's a different audience. I'm hoping that the 58 of you take something away today and you learn something from it. But if I was doing this workshop right now for the entire Wildwest Hacking Fest virtual, there's about 400 or so people. You're the only 58 people that showed up. So if I was doing it for all 400 people, I'm only caring about the 58 of you that showed up, that cared about what I had to say. And so that's something I want you to start thinking about, is that you're not making something for everyone. You're making something for the people who are going to care about what you make. That should take some of the shyness off, because it's not about, the person who looked. One of the worst comedy shows I ever did was at B-Sides Las Vegas. And if you were there last year, you probably saw it. And what happened was we did stand-up comedy in the big room. It was in the big room. We got like 1,000 people in that room, and they asked us to do stand-up comedy up there. And I got up on stage and I'm doing my show, and I know my show is funny because I've done it before in other places, and I know my show is funny. And as I was doing my show, it was as if no one cared. As if no one cared. And I was telling a joke and I got to the punchline and I heard from like a person in the third row, like over, and I was like, thank you. Thank you so much. Because I realized that there was a few people in the room that cared. And that's what we're doing. There's this whole world out there, and most of them do not care about what you're about to make. But for that one person who laughs, for that one person that says, thank you for creating this because I didn't know it until you made it. That's who we're making this for. All right. Next, your own voice. Seriously, the sound of my voice is the worst thing in the world to me. I don't know if any of you recorded like your outgoing voicemail, or if you've ever been on a show, or if you've ever been on a podcast, if you've ever been anywhere, and all of a sudden, like, it's time to hear the recording, and you hear it, and you're like, is that what I sound like? Is it? It is, isn't it? Oh, God. So for those of you at home right now, the first homework I have for you, and I'm going to have little homeworks here and there, and is for you to, at some point, record the sound of your voice on your computer or somewhere. And getting a better mic is going to help, but it's only going to help you hear the sound of your voice better. Like it just does. Like you almost want, I just want the worst microphone possible, so that way I can blame it on the microphone. What I want you to do is record the sound of your voice and just hear it over and over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes less terrible. Because that is all of us, all 58 of you that are currently on this. If I was to like, hey, I want you to hear the sound of your voice, you're like, I also learned a long time ago being a photographer, is if you ever take a group photo of anyone and you hand that group photo to somebody who was in the photo, they don't look at anyone else besides themselves. I want that to settle in for a second. If you hand a group photo to somebody and they're in it, they won't look at anyone else but themselves. And they're looking for flaws. And they're looking for things that they wish they could improve. And it's just something that we do. You know, my daughter came home the other day and she's like, I don't like the way I look. Oh, sweetheart, I don't think you should. I mean, I can understand why you say that, but I don't feel like you should judge the way you look right now while you're like in puberty. because you're not going to look like this, so, a year from now. And she's like, whatever. And I was like, oh, you're so cute. But when we look and when we hear ourselves and when we watch our videos, we're so critical about what we do. And so that's one of the things that you have to get over is that self-criticalness. And it doesn't go away. If I go to hear the recording of this, or if I hear the recording of my own talks from DerbyCon or anywhere else, there's so much like, oh, why did I say that? Oh, that, oh. There's so much cringy moments. But on the flip side, I'll have hundreds of people reach out and say, thank you so much for doing that. Thank you so much for saying that. Thank you so much for teaching me that. You're welcome. You just have to accept that. Imposter syndrome. We already talked about that a little bit. But the sound of your own voice just amplifies the fact that you shouldn't be talking. And so you're like, darn it. So the imposter syndrome kicks in. You're like, am I qualified to teach this? Kellen, I think you're here. Kellen, you gave your talk yesterday about, you're new to this, but you still have something to teach. You can still mentor somebody. When I work with some of the Black Hills testers, you have some junior testers, and they have the imposter syndrome too, because we're Black Hills Information Security. We write blogs, we do these webcasts, and all these people show up. And when I talk to a junior tester and I'm like, would you like to give a webcast? And they're like, how many people are on it? It's like, oh, it's like 1,000. I'm like, oh, no. It's like, no, you're fine. They're like, what am I going to teach somebody? And I was like, so you're a web app pen tester? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, so what did you learn about 7 months ago that you now know, but you didn't know 7 months ago? And they're like, well, this, and this. I was like, that would make a great webcast, because there's most likely a ton of people out there that also don't know those things now. But if you taught it to them right now, they would know those things 7 months from now. So don't just think that because you're at this point in your career, you have nothing to teach, or if you're at this point in your career, like there's so much for you to share with others. And this is not just about InfoSec. This is about your hobbies. This is about the way that you live your life. There are so many things that you can share with others. I'm thinking about doing a Twitch show right now on adulting, because I'm 41 and I have a 14-year-old daughter and I've been married for 21 years. And it's like, is there anything there that I can share with other people who are just learning? So there is an opportunity for you to teach somebody something. And I want to share this with you, is that never deny sharing your knowledge with someone else. There are so many people out there that, like I just keep saying, would benefit from what is currently in your brain. And so if I can encourage you to do anything today, it's to start submitting CFPs to talks for other conferences. It's to start your own Twitch channel where you go through how to do web app pen testing. It is to do your own short how-to videos on how you use a tool. It's to create your own tools. It's to do something like that. Please never deny someone else from learning what's currently in your brain, because there's so much knowledge you can share. But why? Why do any of this? Why do any of this? Why share your knowledge? Why create? Why raise your hand? Why face the criticism? Why overcome your own fears of your shyness? Why do any of this? And there are 3 main reasons. There's A, B, and C. The first one is to give back. If your whole intention, if your whole purpose is to just say, look, I learned coming up to the point in my career, I've learned over the years how to do these things, and I just want to teach the next generation. I just want to teach somebody else. I just want to share what I have that other people shared with me to others. And if that is your main intention, it's going to shine. It's going to shine through, and all the things that you create is going to shine through, and the way that you teach, it's going to shine through. It absolutely is, and people are going to resonate with that, because people like generous they will follow generous people. They just will. They'll see someone that's giving away knowledge, and they're like, thank you. Let me learn more from you. And so by giving back, you're going to help others, but you're also going to start creating a community around the knowledge that you're sharing. And then those people will start sharing knowledge. I get to see it every single day at Black Hills, is that we share our knowledge with so many people. And we created a Discord channel this week for Black Hills. And when we did that, we invited 50 people from Twitter. We invited another 100 people from Twitter. And we just said, there you go. We're just learning how to use this. And they started sharing knowledge with each other. It was a little bit of, here's what I've learned from Black Hills. hey, I have this question. And they started sharing with each other. And that is exactly what we're looking for, is that we are the focal point that got the conversation started. But then once the community gets going, then that community is just out there and helping others. And so that you can be the beginning of that conversation and the beginning of that community for what you want to do. If your intention is to make money, you will. You absolutely can make money by sharing your knowledge. You can make it through training. You can make it through advertising on your blogs. You can make it through sponsors. So I work in marketing. I work in marketing. And if I see somebody out there that has an audience, so Darknet Diaries, about a year ago, I saw Darknet Diaries and that they were growing. And not only were they awesome, because Darknet Diaries is fantastic. If you haven't heard them, go check them out. Jack is an amazing storyteller and has a way of relating information to others. I can also hear my dogs in the background just barking, and somebody let them out. And I'm sure that's fine, because whoever let them out is going to bring them back in. So actually, I really don't know who let the dogs out. So if you want to make money, so when I saw Darknet Diaries as a marketer, I looked at the fact that he was building an audience, and I reached out to Jack and I said, do you take sponsorship? And so he has a person that reached out to me and said, we absolutely do. And we started looking at, would Black Hills sponsor Darknet Diaries? And so if you have a show, if you build an audience and people are starting to show up, people like me will show up too and say, how much money can I give you? And we do this. Like, there's going to be some sponsors that are currently that are listening to the workshop right now. I know that you're a sponsor and I know that you're here. And you do this too. When you see somebody out there that's building an audience and sharing their knowledge, you start looking at them going, how can I be a part of what you're doing to get our message out to your audience? And so if you're building an audience, people like me will show up and ask, can I give you money? So that is a thing that you can do. Build your career. This is an interesting thing. By sharing your knowledge, by being a teacher, by being a subject matter expert, but not calling yourself a thought leader, just thought leader. Whenever so people ask John to come speak at something, and so it's me and John on a call, and they will say, John, you're such a thought leader. Like, I can feel both of us just cringing. It's just because neither one of us want to call John a thought leader. I don't want to be a thought leader. I just want to be someone that's sharing my knowledge. But as you become what other people perceive as a thought leader, it will help you build your career. And think about this. Let's say you're doing a blog on Splunk, all the ins and outs of Splunk and how Splunk works and how this works and how all that stuff works. And then all of a sudden you lose your current job. But there's hundreds and thousands of people who read your Splunk blog. They watch your how-to videos, all that stuff. You have a mailing list that you've created of people who want to see your content in the future. And you somehow lose the job that you have due to whatever happened. It's layoffs, or the company folded, or they got bought out by someone else and they didn't want you. Whatever it is that caused you to lose your job. And you have this audience, this community, these people who respect you and look at you to learn from. And all of a sudden you write a tweet saying, hey, everyone, I'm currently looking for a position right now. This is my background. This is my history. There's like 1,000 people who look at you who are constantly like, oh, yeah, come work for us. This can really help you build your career. So by giving back, by sharing your knowledge, by creating content, and by being brave, even though you're shy. I love this quote. So bravery, hopefully I want to say it right. Saving a baby that fell into a pool is not really brave. It's just the right thing to do. Baby falls in the pool, you jump in to save it. Not really brave. Now, a baby falling into a pool full of sharks, and then you jump in to save it. Now, that's bravery. And so what I mean by that is, if you're afraid, if you're scared, if you're shy, and you still do it anyway, that's being brave. But if you're like, oh, this is real easy, I don't know if that's bravery. And if you're sitting here like, Jason, that feels controversial, we'll talk about it in the Discord channel, because I like to start conversations. Okay, so if your goal is to give back, then that is where you start from. That is your intention. And that is when you're creating anything, that is where you're the center of your why. If your reason is to make money, then that's the center of your why. And so that's going to change the way that you create your content and how you reach out to sponsors. If your goal is to build a career, and that's the core of why you're doing it, it's going to change the content that you create and why you're creating it. But I will tell you this, if your sole intention is to give back, you will make money and you will build your career. Like it will happen. If you start from that generosity of giving back, those other two things will happen. It just does. All right, so some of the types of things that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to jump in and talk about these different types of things that you can create. And then I'm going to get real practical on how-tos. I got an hour and a half still, so stay with me. And then hopefully we'll get into a Q&A section at some point. So we're going to cover webcasts and streaming. We're going to cover how-to videos. We're going to talk blogs and live presentations and podcast. Audience, internal versus public. So I added this slide after I talked to someone at DerbyCon. So I got done doing this whole talk. For the most part, I did this talk at DerbyCon, but it's more expanded for you all. I gave this talk at DerbyCon, and right afterwards, a guy came up and said, "Jason, I loved everything you said. It was good. I see the beneficial giving back. I see this. I see all that. But I work for an organization where I can't talk about any of the things that I do." Yeah, that is a thing in security. Wow, I had not thought of that. And so I added this slide for you, that person who's in a position where you can't give a live presentation, you can't do a webcast on the things that you know, you can't write a blog because of the nature of the work that you do. And so as I was talking to him, I realized there's a difference between an internal audience and a public audience. And so for those of you that are inside that world where you can't share outside of that world, what I'd like for you to start doing is think about how you can be that internal creator of content. And so what I mean by that is if you work in an organization where you can't really share things outside, what if you created the internal security blog for your company, or a how-to video inside your company, or you initiated the conversation with the executives on security and you gave them a rundown on here's how phishing works for executives, here's how this works for executives, and you started taking the knowledge that you had and break it down for people who are not in your section. I remember I talked to Derek Rook one time, and Derek gave his presentation this morning, and I don't know if he's here, but he did an internal CTF. I think it was a physical pen testing CTF at his organization. So it was picking the locks of your internal doors, and I may have this wrong, but I think I have it right. But it was a internal physical pen testing CTF inside your org. And so what he taught some lock picking, he taught this, and he came up with a CTF inside his org, and that's awesome. That's engaging. That's getting people interested. But then you become the subject matter expert for security. And so think about, can I apply any of the things that I'm about to talk about to that internal audience, or can I apply it to a public audience? Now, the public audience, if you work in security and you can't share any of the things that you have there, then the public audience might be one of your hobbies. There are, Mike Poor has this amazing hobby of making knives and making steel cutting instruments. I think that's like a sword and But he created an Instagram for that, and he started getting out there, and he got invited to be on this TV show because of the work that he does. It's incredible. And so if you have this hobby, or if you have this thing that you like to do, maybe that's the public content that you create. And then if you take your security, that's the internal work that you do. Now, I have this other note here, laser focused. And so when I taught film school, students would come in and they would pitch projects. They were like, I have this idea for a movie. I have this idea for a TV show. I have this idea for, web series. And the first question we'd always ask is, who is your audience? And they're like, well, it's everyone. That is the worst answer you could possibly. It is not for everybody. And so what we would do is we'd start diving down who that audience is. And what we would normally do is say who the audience isn't. And so you would have to get into demographics. And so demographics is normally big chunks of people. And I would say, are these the kind of people that go on cruises? And there is a kind of person that goes on a cruise. I became that person last week. There's also the kind of person that goes on a cruise in the middle of the coronavirus. That's a different demographic. But you have these people that, do they wear Wranglers? Wear Wranglers. I was like, yeah, that's a kind of person. I mean, there's a demographic out there of people who wear Wranglers. And so you start diving through demographics, and as we would use different types of demographics, you would start narrowing down your audience. And so it'd be like, is it the kind of person that uses Linux? And you're like, yes. Well, is it the kind of person that would use Windows? Oh, no. So as you start thinking about all the people who it is not, you will be left with the person that it is for. And the reason why this is important, because it gets back to that there's 1,000 people in the room, but only 4 people are listening. Trying to do comedy in a room full of 1,000 people, that wasn't my target audience. The target audience was the 4 people. Imagine if I had taken those 4 people into a side room and did the show for them, it would have been a completely different experience. And so that you start looking at this laser focused audience group, because you're not making it for everyone. You're making it for the people who care. And so if you do come up with an idea, you do like, I want to write a blog about this, I want to do this. The first thing I want you to do is write on your sheet of paper, who is my audience? And start thinking about all the people that it's not. And then you'll be left with the people who it is. And then you can figure out how to reach those people. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Content chunking. So I love this so much, being a person who creates content, is that your goal is to make a big thing that can be broken into smaller things. So it's a big thing that can be broken into smaller things. So you're always thinking, what is the big thing I can make that can be broken into smaller things? What I mean by that is, can I give an hour-long webcast that has purposeful breaks in it? So every 5 minutes, I'm talking about this subject, and then I'm talking about this subject, or this subject, or this subject. And then can I break that webcast down into 5-minute sections, and then make those 5-minute sections available on Twitter or someplace else? Like, how can I make the big thing that I put on YouTube, then I can break it into smaller things? Or how can I make at Sands, I made a lot of posters. And so if you have like the blueprint pen testing poster, that was something that I made with our graphic designer. If you have the pivots and payloads, it's the game poster. You can download all these PDFs if you want. The first poster that we started with was the whiteboard poster. And let me go ahead and bring that up and show you what we did with it. So if you go to whiteboard poster Sans pen testing. Okay. Also, I've been staring at the white ring around my camera for a while, and so now I got this big shoot. All right. So hopefully you can see this. What this is, it's things that would help you with Bash, PowerShell, Python, some command.exe. These are all little hints and notes that would just help you be a better pen tester. And so you can take a look at that and go download it. So the idea was, you are the kind of person, when you find something that's good, you write it down. You're like, keep it. And so what if you were in your cubicle, or if you were at your home or somewhere, and you started posting those up around you? And so that was the initial concept. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's like a whiteboard. So, you got all your notes on whiteboard. Well, what if we just created the whiteboard and then we sent it to people? And so it's already got all the notes on it. And so that's what we did. We designed this to look like a whiteboard. And if it's hanging up in an office, it looks like someone's actual whiteboard, because it's actually a big poster. And it looks like you're just really diligent about finding things that will help you do your job. And so we created this poster. And then here's the part that I really liked, is that each one of these, I don't know if you can see my mouse, each one of these became a piece of content that was then shared on social media. And so each one of these cards, so there's 5 Python cards, there's like 6 PowerShell cards, there's like 9 Bash cards, and there's this. Each one of those was then broken down into its individual piece. And then that was shared out. And what we did is that we said, if you like this, then click this link to go get the full poster, or to ask for us to mail it to you. And so all this was broken down into individual chunks. And so if you look at the giant poster PDF here, this all broke down, and it was promotional because you can't make anything without being able to sell it. So we got this here, all broken down to individual pieces. So that's what I mean. You create a giant chunk of content. How can I do that? How can I make something that's big and then break it down into its individual pieces? If you've ever played Backdoors and Breaches, that is what this is. We said, how can we make something that's incredibly useful to people? Something that's going to help them with doing incident response. Like, the sole purpose, the intent was, how do we give back? Absolutely. The very core of this was, how do we give back? How do we create something that benefits people? Now, it is beneficial to us because each one of these has like a blog on it that leads back to us. But the sole purpose in the very beginning, the genesis of this, was, how can we create But if you take a look at the concept of content chunking, this is a deck of cards. All of this is one big piece of content. So it's a big piece of content that teaches people something and it leads back to learn more. But then each card is a piece of content. So this is one big piece of content, the whole deck, and then each one of these is its own piece of content that leads to other pieces of content because there's links on here and there's other things like that. So if you go to, and I wanted to post an example today for you, if you go to the Black Hills Twitter page, I did this today as an example. So this is one card of 52, and here's the 2 blogs that lead back to it. And if you take a look at some of the stats, 12 click-throughs or link click-throughs led back to the website. And so people learned more about phishing today because of that link. So content chunking, the concept again, just to run through it, is you're like, how can I make something big and then break it into smaller individual pieces? Evergreen. So what evergreen means is that you make something that lasts for forever, essentially. You write a blog that can be useful to anyone for the next 5-10 years. You do a webcast that's going to be useful for the next 5 to 10 years. You create a tool that's going to be useful for the next 5 to 10 years. You're always thinking about, is this something that's going to be evergreen? Now, not everything that you make will be evergreen. I remember we put out a blog last year. I think Carrie wrote it. So it was a how to bypass Windows Defender or something like that. It was something that was like, oh, this is really good. It's useful. It's great. Put out to an audience. And within a day, that blog was dead because someone at Microsoft was like, oh no. And they fixed it. They fixed the bug like almost instantly. And so that blog was pretty much dead within a week. And so we were like, no, that sucks. But the techniques that were used in it were still useful. And so in a little bit, you'll get a chance to see our content library. And when I go through the content library, you're going to see tons of blogs that are just read out. What that means is that they're no longer useful because the techniques or the tool that was used is no longer useful in pen testing or offensive security. But you're going to see a ton of them that are still useful. So a blog written in 2017 can still be useful to somebody in 2020 because the techniques used, the tools used are still useful. And that's what I mean by evergreen, is that you wrote it in 2017, but you can still keep using it all the way up until today. And so when you're looking at creating your own content, that's something to keep in mind. Is this something that's going to be evergreen? Not every single piece of content needs to be evergreen, but it's really good if it is. Content library. Make it once, use it over and over and over and over and over and over again. So content library, I'm going to show you what ours looks like. So every time you create a piece of content, well, that's the name of it. This is when it was published. We give all of our content an ID, and that's Mick Douglas, and he wrote this. And we can take a look at how many people clicked on it. We can take a look at where the link is and all that stuff. And then we also have a content library that goes along with it. So this is the same title, same ID. You got Mick Douglas, and then we have a pre-written tweet and a pre-written LinkedIn post. It's already ready to go. And this was built so that way we could hire interns to be able to do our social media scheduling for us. And so we can schedule out and say, on this date of this time, post 000001. If you never noticed this before, on all of our graphics on our post, on these, let's see, if you look it up in that top corner, you got 00436. That is the graphic that goes with that post. And so we created this so that way if an intern, and I'm not saying interns aren't smart, I'm just saying interns, you need to get them up to speed quickly and you need to turn them over. And if you're managing them all the time, then why even have an intern? So we created this content library so that way if you create something back in 2015 and it's still useful, well, then you can still post it. Now, I know it was made in 2015, but like I said, if it's still useful. And so as you go through here, and as you can see all the red, those are no longer, we asked all the pen testers and all the blog authors to go through and say, is this blog still relevant? Is this blog still good? And the ones that are red, it was no. But you see all the ones that are still not red, and we can post those. And why are we posting them? Because they're helpful, because we're giving back to the community. it does lead people back to our website, and if they want to hire us, they can. But the sole purpose of it is that this is useful information that we're getting out to an audience, and those people have been sharing it with others and learning from it. And the blog written in 2017, you may think like, oh, I already know that. You may think you already know that. Like, it was written in 2017. I've been in the industry for 5 or 6 years. I know that. Why are you still posting it? And it's really because of that new student who just got into college, who's starting to learn cybersecurity, that decided to follow our Twitter feed. And now they're like, oh, what is that? And now they're learning something. So once again, it's not just about you. It's about the whole community. And so the thing that you created a few years ago could still be useful to that person who's just getting started. All right. So this is what a content library looks like, and this is how you manage it. Super simple. How do you create graphics? You can do it on Fiverr. You can find someone on Fiverr. So if you go to Fiverr, Fiverr, yes.com. A great place to find graphic artists is to go to Fiverr, and you can hire them. And once you create the template, then it's just a matter of sending, here's the new title, here's this, here's the number, please add it and change it. So we have a graphic designer that works with us, and her job is to make these. She makes a lot of other things, but one of her jobs is to create these for us to share. There's one. Okay. Alrighty. All right. And then one last tip before we start diving into some of the more how-tos is interviews. So let's say you want to start a podcast that talks about Hollywood stunts. And I'm just throwing that. It was like a random thing that seriously just popped into my head. And you want to do a podcast on Hollywood stunt people because you want to be a Hollywood stunt person, or you just love Hollywood stunts. So what you can do is reach out to Hollywood stunt people. And one of the ways to do that is to go to IMDb. If you didn't know, IMDb Pro. Go to Pro. I don't have a Pro account, so I can't show you right now. But if you go to IMDb Pro, back when I worked in the film industry all the time, IMDb Pro was my best friend. So with IMDb Pro, you can essentially find any agent or contact information for anyone in the film industry. So a few years ago, I ran something called Free Comic Book Day. So if you've ever been to a comic book store, for a few years, I was the person who ran Free Comic Book Day for the free comic book industry. And one of the things I would do for Free Comic Book Days, I would reach out to celebrities. I'd reach out to people in the industry, and I would ask them if they would make videos or something to help promote Free Comic Book Day. And I am going to show you my favorite person that I ever got to do a Free Comic Book Day. All right. This is LeVar Burton. That was like the best day of adult Jason's life when I got a chance to reach out to LeVar Burton through his agent, through IMDb Pro. And so I got in contact, and I said, this is who we are. We're Free Comic Book Day. We're all about comic books. And we were looking to see if LeVar would do this. And they said, sure. And so I got a chance to call and talk to LeVar Burton, walk him through what we were looking for. He asked me, why are we doing this? And, not why are we doing this, but try to get at the why so that way he could say what he wanted to say properly. And he did it. And so the reason why I bring this up is because I have very limited OSINT skills, super limited OSINT skills. And you don't. Some of you that are currently listening to this workshop have amazing OSINT skills, and you can track down anybody, anywhere. And so I want you to start thinking about that with IMDb Pro or your other websites that that you can track people down. I mean, back in 2004 or 5 when Facebook was just starting, you could message anybody. It was before they sent you to the other category. You could message anybody. And back then, I would reach out to Hollywood producers and directors and writers, and I would just send them messages like, hey, I'm Jason, I'm this. And they would get back with me. Not all of them, because not everyone always gets back with you. But one of the people that I reached out to back in MySpace days, to MySpace, is, I'm not going to MySpace. I'm going to go to this guy here. Jason Aaron. So my name is Jason. My business partner name is, at the time was named Aaron. And so this guy who had just written one book at the time, it's called The Other Side, named Jason Aaron. And we read it and it was fantastic. And we were like, let's be friends with that guy. So on MySpace, I reached out to Jason Aaron and I said, hey, we are comic book store owners and we'd love to become friends with you. And we did. We became good friends with Jason Aaron. And for years, Jason Aaron would come to Jason and Aaron's joint birthday party. And it's like Jason Aaron presents Jason Aaron. Anyway, it was fun. But this guy went on to become like an amazing superstar in the comic book industry. So he writes tons of other great books. And it really started with a MySpace message where we got to meet him, got to know him. And we've been friends since like 2006. And I'm not, am I name dropping? I hope I'm not name dropping. What I hope I'm doing is showing you how you can use your OSINT skills to get in touch with people. Because here's the step I want you to take next. If you have a show or a webcast or a blog or this, and you want to interview somebody that's, don't go A-list famous because you don't have an A-list audience to get A-list famous people yet. I mean, if you want to, feel free to go and try that. But if you're looking at the B level or C level or D level or the crew level, these people who are part of this industry over here, are part of this industry, or part of that industry, or a part of your hobby or something like that, you can reach out to these people. You can contact them and you can say, I have a podcast. I have this show. I have this blog. I have this interview channel. I have this Twitch. I have this thing. I have this thing that I'm creating. Would you come on and allow me to interview you? Now, as a part of my job, one of the things I do is I go out and I look for podcasts. I look for shows and I say, we have these testers. Would you like them to be a part of your show? And a lot of these podcasts and like your podcast, you're gonna need someone to interview. And so marketers like me are always reaching out, and it's not going to be a sales pitch. It's no vendor pitch. And I highly recommend that you don't do vendor pitches and sales pitches because that just turns off your audience. Is that you reach out to the person you want to interview and say, I have this show. Would you like to be on it? Now, if they say yes, and you're doing the show together, what are you doing while you're interviewing this person? You're starting a relationship. You're creating a relationship with this person that you're interviewing. And that relationship may turn into a business relationship, may turn into a personal relationship, may never go anywhere else. But that interview is your first step to building a new contact, a new connection, and you're networking. It's an opportunity for you to make friends. And I call it the Trojan horse because there are some people who, if your sole purpose is to make money or build your career with the content you're creating, they do this on purpose. What they'll do is they'll take a look at their top 50 prospects or the top 50 leads or the top 50 companies that they want to work for. And they will reach out to those top 50 companies and say, would you like to be on my show? That is their first step in the door to now working with that company. This is something people really do. And so if that is a goal or the intent of yours, if you're a business that does pen testing and you want to do it for these companies, you can reach out to these companies and you can say, hey, we'd like to bring you on the show. And we want to talk about security. And so maybe you're talking to the CISO or talking to this person or talking to them about things that they can talk about because, once again, the work that we do can be pretty vague when we do discuss it. And so as you're talking with these people, you're also building an relationship with them. Now, if your sole purpose is to make money or build your career, then what you do is about 3 or 4 days later, you send them the link or the podcast or the show or the Twitch channel or whatever it is that you're creating. You send them a link and you say, hey, thanks so much for being on my show. Really appreciated it. Hopefully I can reach out again and talk to you in the future. If they respond back, then it's like what we in marketing call a drip campaign, is that you start with this. Here, let me introduce you. And then over time, let's build this relationship. And then over time, I would like to tell you about a product that I have or a service that I offer. And so this is something that you can do. And if this turns you off, if as I'm telling you this right now and you're like, ugh, then cool, good, then you're going to start with that. The sole purpose for doing this is to give back. Like what I'm saying is that whatever your intent is, there's an opportunity here. So if your intent is to give back, then maybe it's just building relationships with people who taught you something and you want to bring them on because that person taught you something. and you want to give them an opportunity to share with the audience that you've been creating. So interviews are a Trojan horse, and you have amazing OSINT skills. There is nobody that's outside your grasp of reaching out to and asking if they can be a part of your show. All right. I'm going to give us a 10-minute break. Should I give a 10-minute break? Here. Post in the questions if you need a 10-minute break. I don't. I was just making sure. If I see one yes, I would do a 10-minute break. Ali said yes. So I would be back in 10 minutes, but I'm not going anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break from doing the content, and I'm just going to answer some questions. So I'm going to go to the Discord, and I'm going to answer some questions. All right. So, shoot. Hi, Mom. Hey, Husker. Wait, are you calling me your mom? If you have any questions, feel free. Question, is it possible to get a template of your content library? Yes, it is. I will get that out to you. I will figure out a way to post that. I will put it in our activecountermeasures.com/presentations, and I will put it in Wobbles Hacking Fest virtual folder, and you can grab it there. All right. I get the Ryan Reynolds thing often. I feel like I'm the better looking version of Ryan Reynolds. You're watching something else other than Discord during your talk that explains it. So we're going to start up again at 1:05 for content. In the meantime, take a break and I will answer questions. Is giving back to the industry the best sort of guidance? No, that's not my guidance. My guidance is know why you're doing it. So it really does boil down to those three things. Is it to make money, build your career, or give back? And so you just need to know why you're doing it. Because if your goal is to make money, then that a year later is your key performance indicator. Like you've made $10,000. You're like, okay. So that is your key performance indicator. If it is to build your career, then a year later, do you have a different, do you have the job that you want that you didn't currently have? If the reason why is to give back, then maybe it's the community that's being built and the amount of people that are showing up to your webcast. And it's about the numbers of humans. And it's not necessarily the number, but the connections that are being made. A lot of times we have over 1,000 people in our webcast, and you see the same faces over and over and over again. Those people are becoming like family. And so what's cool is that you see the same people coming back, and it's not just becoming a sea of faceless people. It's becoming our friends, and it's becoming like family. What do you do when you are asked to teach, talk about something you either don't know or aren't familiar with? So one of the greatest ways to learn something is to have to give a presentation on it. Like it really is. So that is my number one recommendation. If someone asks you to present on something you currently don't know, then it gives you an opportunity to learn it. Same thing with content creation. If there's something that you do want to learn, plan to do a webcast on it 6 months from now. And you're going to give yourself a reason to learn it. I will talk about this in a little bit, but just during the break, is that I and many of the people I know, when they submit a CFP, they have no idea how they're going to do the research or how they're going to build the slides or how they're going to put anything together. They just submit a CFP for this thing that they want to do or this idea that they have or this research that they want to do. And then if they get accepted, they're like, well, now I have a deadline to learn this thing. So I would say, so what do you do when you're asked to teach something you're not familiar with? Quickly learn it or ask not to present. The only time, no, I don't want to say only time. The time that I look really uncomfortable presenting is on the one slide that I don't know as well. Like all the other slides, I'm like, I'm good. And then I get to the one slide where I don't feel real confident about it. And like internally, I'm like, don't die right now. Don't die. like the anxiety shoots up, my heart starts racing more, like the room starts getting like whoa, 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 whoa. So I would just say that if you are presenting on something you don't know very well, it's going to show in the way that you're confident. Unless it's whose slide is it anyway, and then that's just fun. We are going to try to figure out a way, maybe not for this event, but to be able to do a virtual whose slide is it anyway through Discord and presenting. All right. How do you adapt your presentations to very young audiences like kids? Ooh, don't swear. I don't think I've sworn so far at this. Have I? If I've sworn, let me know. When I generally teach, especially when I taught college, I just swore all the time because I really felt like it got the students more engaged. Either they hated it and they paid attention because they hated it, or they liked it and so they paid attention because I was being brutally honest, like Gary Vee. So how do you adapt to kids? So change your anecdotes to things that they would understand. And what I mean by that is when I teach, I think about my audience all the time. So right now I am adapting everything that I'm talking about for the most part to InfoSec. But I could do the same exact talk for somebody that worked in automotive. I could do the same exact talk for someone that worked in marketing. I could do the same exact talk for people that worked in other industries. And I would just start adjusting my stories, my anecdotes, my reasons to something that audience would understand. So when working with little kids, you start thinking about, what is their world like, and find anecdotes that fit that. How much time is too much time into creating content? Yeah, that's up to you and your schedule. We'll get into this in a little bit, but one of the things is don't publish anything until you've made a couple of those things. And I'll give you an exact number here in a little while. But don't publish anything until you've made a bunch. And the reason why is because that first one you make might have taken you 2 weeks to create, and then at the end of it, you realize you don't have 2 weeks to make that thing. And so all of a sudden, you decide not to make stuff anymore. What's the best way to reach out to people that you want to see your content that's people aren't specifically looking for? My YouTube channel is a cybersecurity awareness channel. I know a lot of people may not be interested, but I want to increase cyber awareness for the average person. Reaching these people seem to be difficult. Yeah. So in that situation, finding people like that is you start looking for influential people in other industries. So if you want to bring security awareness to what you call the average person, then you would find somebody that's already has an audience, either through Twitch or through Instagram or through other places. And it's called influencer marketing. And so what you would do is you would reach out to them and say, would it be possible for you to mention this to your audience because it's really beneficial to them and it can really help you and help your audience learn about cybersecurity stuff. So if you didn't catch that, what you're looking for is other people in other industries that have influence, and then you reach out to them and say, would you be willing to share your influence with your audience to help this get out to that audience? Do you know of opportunities for learning or getting a mentorship for creating content, like brainstorming content ideas, turning those into draft content, co-presenting with someone? Kellen, let me think about that one. No, it's not weird. It's just let me think about the best way to get that. All right, so we lost a few, and that's fine. We lost a few people during the break. I'm going to get ready to start back up here. And so back to the imposter syndrome and back to the shyness is that I, just like you, if you're giving a talk in a live presentation and somebody gets up and leaves, it hurts. For some reason, it hurts. And what happens is they get up and they may have a totally legitimate reason. They got to use the bathroom. They got to go somewhere else. They want to go to another talk. They get up and leave. And you're like, was it something I said? Could I have been better? Could I have done something different? And so, we just lost a few people during the 10-minute break. And I was even thinking about that. Do I have this 10-minute break? Because I might lose some people. But once again, the people you lose are the people who you're not reaching, or they wanted to go to another talk. And so I have to understand that. All right. And we're back. Webcast, live versus recorded. So this is lead into what I just said about the people staying and the people going and all that stuff. Webcast. So what is a webcast? A webcast is normally a 60-minute or 30-minute where you're going to cover a single topic. So one of the things that you're going to need is a webcast platform. At Black Hills, we use GoToWebinar. You could use GoToMeeting if you have up to depending on your account, I think you can have between 50 to 250 people. So if you don't think it's going to be a lot of people showing up in the beginning, you could just create a GoToMeeting account. You can post a link out in your social media or wherever and say, I'm going to cover this topic for a little while. If you want to show up, you can. It's going to be engaging. I will answer your questions, stuff like that. But if you start getting into larger audiences, so this year at Black Hills, we started averaging more than 1,000 people per webcast. And it kind of exploded. Last year, the average was about 500 to 600, and then it kept growing. And then now we're averaging one webcast with 1,500 people and stuff. And the reason why I bring that up is because there's multiple tiers. You're not just doing webcasts for tons of people. But as you increase the amount of people you're talking to, you also have to increase an infrastructure of answering questions and things like that. So for those of you who are just getting started, if you're doing webcast, you can start with any platform. While we were looking at, we had 6,000 people sign up for a free training class that we were doing, and we didn't know how to facilitate if all 6,000 people showed up. So we found it was a Webinar Jam. All right. So for those of you that want to take a look at this, if you go to, there's a ton of platforms out there. We liked Webinar Jam. The only issue with Webinar Jam is that they have a vulnerability inside their platform. And so until they fix that vulnerability, we're not going to use it. But Webinar Jam is here. You can do it for if you're doing we're doing an information security webcast. And so to have a vulnerability in the platform was not good for us. But if you're doing a webcast on your hobby or something else that you like to do, then maybe Webinar Jam. And it's $90 a month. It can give you up to 5,000 people. You can probably start at the smaller tier. But there's a lot of different services out there. We just use GoToWebinar because it's stable and it's secure. Even we got hit by, let's just call them Ruskies, who were hitting us with a bot, and they were filling up our list of, they were registering everybody. And so we reached out to GoToWebinar and we said, hey, we're having this problem. And so they were in the middle of creating a CAPTCHA to shut that stuff down. And we became a beta user for that. So what is the difference between live and recorded? And I will tell you this, it's the retention rate. It's people's attention. The retention rate for a live webcast is about 90%. The retention rate for a live webcast is about 90%. The retention rate for a recorded webcast is 10% or less. Think about that. The retention rate for a live webcast is 90. The retention rate for a recorded is 10. And those are people who go all the way through from beginning to end. And why is that? It's because you are a human being and I'm a human being and I'm currently speaking to you and you're hearing me and there's a chance that you can engage with me. You can write a question. We can go back and forth. But with a recorded, that's not, I'm just a video, just like all the other videos on the internet. And if it's not interesting to me after 30 seconds, I'll just kill it. But there's something about human to humans. If we see another human being, we will give them our attention. And it's the reason why in a live presentation, if I'm up on stage, generally people won't leave. And the same thing for you. If you're up on stage and giving a live presentation, generally people won't leave. It's because there's something about us humans that are like, you know what? I'm just going to stay. I think it would be rude for me to get up and leave. But it doesn't mean they're paying attention. The fact that you're still here doesn't mean that you're actually watching me right now or looking at my slides. It just means that you're here. And so I know that you could be looking at other things. You're doing work right now. You're checking your emails. You're on this Discord channel. I still don't have your full attention. But it's more than if I was recorded. And so if I was going to encourage you to do anything, I would say I would encourage you to do live webcast. And live webcast can help you start building your mailing list. And then as you build your mailing list or your Discord channel, especially if you're doing Twitch or some other live streaming like YouTube Live or something, if you're doing live sessions, live streaming, and those people are engaging with you, and then you can say, hey, go follow me on my Discord channel or go and join my mailing list, then those are the same people that when you go live again and you send out the email and say, hey, we're going live at this date at this time, they'll show back up for the next one because you've given them something that they've been beneficial to them. They've now internalized it. They liked it. It's good. They pass it on to others. And so you start building that community right there. So live. Now, it doesn't mean you don't take your recording and put it up, but that recording should point people to your next live offering. So you would want that recording to constantly be pushing people to the live version, because live is where the engaging part takes place. So create get an account. You can use GoToMeeting. You can go to do others. And then what are you going to do your webcast on? Whatever you really want to. So Kellen, you brought up a good point. Who do you brainstorm with? And at Black Hills, they have me. They do. And at some organizations, I'm going to butcher your name. It's Zeleda. I know you're within Guardians, and so they have you. And so one of the things I do is I reach out to the staff and I say, hey, we need a webcast for this date. What would you like to do it on? And they're like, I don't know. I was like, all right, so what are you currently working on? They're like, well, I'm doing this. I was like, so what was something interesting in your last pen test report? And they're like, well, this was an interesting finding. Well, how'd you find it? And they're like, well, I found it this way. I was like, is that a tool that you're currently using? Mm-hmm. Is that a tool that other people would want to know about? And they're like, yeah, I think so. Okay, cool. So we're going to do a webcast on this tool using this technique that you used on a recent pen test. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so it is beneficial to have someone to bounce ideas off of, because if I'm sitting here right now and it's just me, that imposter syndrome is going to kick in super hard. And I'm going to be like, wow, what about this? Well, I could do a show about that. And all of a sudden it's like, no one wants to hear you say that. Nobody would want to see that. No. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, so it does help to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. And I will talk about this in a little bit, but for your how-to videos, it's always good to have someone else around. So Kellen and the rest of you, if there's someone that you trust that for their opinion, then I would recommend that you reach out to them and say, here's like the 5 ideas that I would like to do. Which one of those do you think is best? Or you ask them this question: what's something that you wish you knew a year ago that you currently know now? And that's a good question to get people started with. Oh, I wish I would have known this about Metasploit, or I wish I would have known this about going hiking, because my wife and I like to go hiking. And one of the things that we do is that we learn about hiking through other blogs or through other people's websites. And one of the things that we really like is there's a website, an app called Gut Hooks, or All Trails. And it's the reviews that people leave. And so that's content. You know, someone goes to a cabin and they're like, this is the information about it. I'm like, cool. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us before we get to that place. And so I'm not just talking about InfoSec. I'm talking about you have so much that you know, and other people can benefit from it. Live streaming. This is new. I took a class on live streaming about 4 weeks ago. And I know about live streaming. I know about Twitch. I know about YouTube. And I know about gamers. And I know about all these people. But I am 41. And I realize that I'm 5 years too old to be really good at this. And you're like, but I'm like 43 and I know it. It's like, I know, but I missed it. Just like my brother is 7 years older than me, and he missed the internet completely. Like he was 7 years older, and by the time the internet came out, he was already in his career. So there's things that we miss. It's just at our age, we don't catch it. Like Discord. There's some of you who are using Discord for the very first time, and you are begrudgingly using it because you're a Slack user. And so I was talking to someone yesterday, and it's like, no, I like Slack. And that's fine. It's just that, we miss things. We have to be taught by other people. So I took a class a couple weeks ago, and Black was really cool. And I said, I want to take some training. And they're like, what on? And I was like, streaming. I was like, okay. They approved it. I flew a former student of mine. So it's a guy that I taught 12 years ago at film school. I'd gone in the streaming direction. So he's now streaming in that industry. And I saw what he was doing. I saw the work that he was creating. And I said, could you come teach me? And so I recommend this for you all too. If you see someone out there that's doing something interesting, you can bring them on as a consultant. Please teach me what you know. And so he came in and he did this class on live streaming, and I learned a lot. And one of the things I learned was Twitch has a section, if you twitch.tv. And right now I am blind from looking at the light. There are all these different sections. Whoa, there's all kinds of stuff with Twitch. Okay, no, chatting. Okay. Yeah. So just chatting is the place that you would want to be. So just chatting is where you can talk about anything that you want to cover. And the reason I was just is because I know that there's going to be a recording here, and I don't know what's there, and I didn't want to look at it too long. So Twitch is fine. I can't imagine what the Discord's saying right now. So live streaming, you would be in the just chatting section. So Discord, Twitch, in the beginning was all about gamers. It was gamers doing gaming stuff and people watching other people play games, and that could be the content that you create. But they did start a section called Just Chatting, and Just Chatting is any topic whatsoever. There's a guy who's a mechanic, and he does a live stream of his being a mechanic all day. And the cars come in, the cars leave. But when the cars come in, he does a diagnostic check. He walks up to the camera, he talks through what it is. And he has a thing where if you pay to be a subscriber, you can ask him any question. And so for people who are learning about being a mechanic or learning about automotive work, they pay some money to be a subscriber, and they ask his question, and then he answers their questions. And so that's just something that he does. So if there's a topic or a hobby or InfoSec even, and you want it to be a live Twitch streamer or a YouTube streamer, then you can do that. So what was the big thing that I took away from that class? You didn't ask me that, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Is probably one of the biggest things was this camera that you're currently seeing. We use that. This microphone we already have. So if you're like, what do you use? And you sound really great. No, thank you so much. So we use this camera. If you want to get that, and we use this microphone. Fiverr is a great place to get the graphics made for your streaming channel. And then I spent, if it wasn't for that class a couple weeks ago, we would not have been ready for this virtual conference this week. It totally wouldn't. I didn't know a lot of the things that we're currently using. And the Discord channel, which feels like it's pulling this whole con together in one place, was something that I learned a couple weeks ago. And once again, I'm 41. I didn't know about Discord. He taught it to me. I saw the capabilities. I saw the ability to pull it together. And so we built this Discord on like Monday evening and sent out the invites just because of that class. So what was the biggest takeaway from? I think the biggest takeaway from that was how easy it was to stream. If you're looking for software to do it, it is Streamlabs for those of you that have a PC, or you're going to use OBS if you have a Mac. Is that I thought streaming would be difficult because the last time I tried to stream or do work like this was about 6 or 7 years ago, and the computers just could not do the things that I wanted to do in my head. Like I wanted it to look like this, and I wanted to do that. And so I was basing my knowledge on the things that I saw years ago. And so what happened was this consultant guy sat down, and he started showing me, and he showed me Streamlabs, and he showed me OBS, and he showed me how you can pull all these different streams in, and how you can do this. And I was like, it's all in real time, isn't it? And he's like, yeah, it's just real time. You just drag this over here, you hit stream, you can just drag it while it's I was like, in real time on your laptop. Oh my God, this is so easy. And it really was. The biggest takeaway from the entire class was how easy it was to stream. And so that's just something to give you as a takeaway. It's how easy. Streamlabs. Oh, Stream Deck. So we just bought this at Black Hills, and we haven't used it yet. All right. Stream Deck. This right here, inside Streamlabs and inside OBS, you can build these things called scenes. And then you can map these scenes and cameras and everything to the actual buttons on here. And so while you're streaming, you can just hit the buttons on your Streamlab, and it will take you from camera 1 to camera 2, or it will take you from the camera and your slides to just a shot of you, or it will take you to a camera above showing your keyboard. It will take you to, something if you're doing hardware hacking, it will take you to whatever. Or if you have this really cool transition that you get made on Fiverr, that takes you from like, and like your production value just goes up. So Stream Deck is what we'll be using in the next couple weeks. We would have used it sooner, but I went on a cruise, and then we had this virtual conference. All right. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just, that's what happened. All right, how-to videos. All right, how-to videos are different. These are the 3 to 9 minute single topic on how to do something. When I first came to Black Hills, I was like, hey, John, we need to make these how-to videos. And there was a bit of a culture shift from what we were doing. Because if you're used to doing these long form pieces of content, doing something short just feels weird. But if you start doing something short, then doing something long would probably feel weird. So we got these 7-minute single topics. And it's real basic. It's getting started with basic Google searches. It's got some information here. It's brought to you by, and this is 7 minutes and 32 seconds. And if you take a look, I'll show you the numbers here. The numbers for our long form is 800. There are also the numbers for our short form content is pretty good too. The difference is the long form content, the 60-minute stuff, has that 10% retention rate. The short form content has a 50 to 60% retention rate. And so there are people who just start it and go, no, this isn't for me. And so that kills us right there. But for the majority of the people, they're going all the way through to the end. And so somebody will give you, if you think it's going to be good for you, will give someone at least 4 minutes on the internet. Still 4 minutes is an eternity. Do you know why I know 4 minutes is an eternity on the internet? Because a 5-second commercial before a YouTube video feels like the longest thing in the world. And so 4 minutes is an eternity. And so if you're making a 4-minute how-to video, just remember that the majority of people will get through it because they think you're going to teach them something, but some people won't. So if you're making a 60-minute thing, but can you make a 60-minute thing and then break it into smaller 5 to 10-minute things, that content chunking coming to the smaller pieces. All right. So shorter form content is the how-to videos. The internet is full with them. And then whenever you create the title, there's some back and forth between using the actual word how to, or getting started with. That's all back to the SEO. What are people searching for? So if someone's searching for how to use Metasploit, that might be, you call it how to use Metasploit, or how to use this tool inside Metasploit, how to use this exploit inside Metasploit, how to use this inside Cobalt Strike, how to use this. Like, what is the thing that you can show people how to use? And does that become the title of your how-to video? Now, you can amass a massive audience with how-to videos, because I see it all the time on YouTube. I get a little YouTube jealous when I see that this one channel on Metasploit how-tos has like 1.2 million subscribers and we have like 10,000. But I'm like, 10,000 is good, Jason. Yeah, it's fine. You don't have to compare yourself to them all the time. It's okay. But these how-to videos will build a larger subscriber base, I believe, faster than long-form content. The long-form content is really good at building that relationships. If people watch all the way to the end, they start becoming like family. Friends become like family. But those how-to people, they have a larger audience for that next video. Blogs. Yay, blogs. So Black Hills does a lot of blogs. We currently have like 400 and some. But every journey starts with a single step. So if you go all the way back to the very first blog in all eternity, written by Mick Douglas. And so your very first blog will be 0001 if you haven't written one before. And you will create a Twitter post and a LinkedIn post. Why is it different? Because the format's a little different and you don't want to just copy and paste it from one to the other. And so you got that. So your journey to 100 blogs or so will start with a single one. And what are you going to write on? I don't know. That's your first step. The one thing about blog writing, though, is everyone who writes a blog on how to write a blog. So I'm not going to tell you how to write a blog, but if you go and watch that talk that I gave at DerbyCon a few years ago, I think it's here. Yeah. A presentation or presentations because presenting. If you go back and watch that, it will give you a really good structure for how to do a hook, a beginning, a middle, a climax, and an end to your blog, and how you follow that format of asking a question of your audience and how you answer that question at the end and how you give a takeaway and how you hopefully inspire them to want to learn something new. Like, you just follow that format that's in that webcast, and that's a good place to get you started. All right, so back to what do you call your blog? Do you want to call it how to do something? When I first came to Black Hills, and I apologize to all the testers, is I started making them change the names of their blogs. Because what we learned is that anything that started with the words how to became very successful. Anything that started with like creating the next generation of interns, like how to create the next generation of interns would be way better than creating the next generation of interns. You see the difference. is that people don't search for a lot of these things. But if it did say how to do something, and we could show data-driven decision making, that anything that started with how to was getting a lot more organic search results through Google. And so that's something to keep in mind, is that you and me, we have these cool titles we want to give something, but that might not necessarily be the thing that draws people in and gets them to find your blog. And if your sole purpose is to give back, then you want more people to be able to read it. If your sole purpose is to make money, then you definitely want more people to read it. And if your sole purpose is to build your career, then once again, you want more people to read it. So if you can just adjust the title of your blog and some of the wording inside the blog itself, and that just creates more people to come back for you, then that's cool. I'm going to show you this LMNNR. Like, I had no idea what this meant when I first got here, but I do now. And the reason why is because it is the first blog. Like, you have the Wikipedia, and then you have Black Hills. This is the single most trafficked blog on the Black Hills website every single week and every single month, regardless of what we do. This gets more traffic than anything else on the website. And it's just when someone does this, and it's how to disable LMNR and why you would want to. But anyone that does a search for LMNR, they will find our blog, and it leads to a massive amount of traffic for us. All right. Podcast. Podcast. Yeah. If you haven't listened to Darknet Diaries, definitely go listen to Darknet Diaries. They do podcasts really well, but that is not the type of podcast you're going to do. The goal is not to do someone else's podcast. The goal is to create your own, and it's going to take a little while for you to get over the sound of your own voice. So once you get over the sound of your own voice, then you can actually start settling into what your topics are going to be and what it's going to be about. And I said a little earlier, don't publish anything. Don't tell anyone that you're starting a blog. Don't create a Twitter for your podcast. Don't go out and start marketing this thing that you haven't made yet. And what I mean by that is, I would like you to create 20 of something before you start sharing it. So create 20 podcasts. So 20 fully edited, finished podcasts. And if you're like, Jason, but that seems like a lot of work without any reward. Yeah, it is. I mean, if you want to go be a live Twitch streamer, you can start in the beginning. You won't have an audience, so it's probably going to take the 20th time of you doing a live Twitch stream before anyone actually shows up. But do 20 of something. Do 20 blogs. I mean, you can invite people to your webcast, but if they don't show up, you still give it. And the reason why is because you're going to leave this workshop, and I've seen it. And Jeff McJunkin, if you're in here, you've seen it too. When you get done teaching people something, they're really excited about it. When I taught filmmaking, I taught content creation, and taught all that stuff. I would the students was like, I just gotta get out of this class and go make something. And a lot of them did. Like, they would leave the class and they start making something. But I'm telling you right now that the motivation and the desire I'm currently expressing to you and that you're feeling inside is not going to last long. By Monday, it will be gone. It really will. And so I'm trying to instill in you that if this is something you want to do, then go make 20 of something before you release it. Because if not, you're going to have a blog that has one blog. And the blog's going to say, I'm getting ready to start my blog. Or your podcast that you start on iTunes is going to be like your first podcast that you actually get up. You're going to have the account for it, but you don't actually have the podcast for it, because as you realize, as I'm making this podcast, I'm watching other podcasts, I'm listening to other podcasts on how to make podcasts. As I'm doing this, I don't have the time for it. You don't have the time to do the OSINT. You don't have time to do the interviews. You don't have time to do this. And so I want you to make 20 of something before you start publishing and start telling people about it, because it's going to take 20 for you to get it down. It's going to take 20 blogs for you to get it to where you start finding your voice and how you want to structure what you want to do. So it's going to take a little while. You are going to be motivated leaving this. There's 48 of you that are stuck around. So I'm guessing the 48 of you are pretty motivated. And you're thinking about this stuff and you're internalizing it all right now, and you're trying to figure out how to apply it to yourself. And that's going to run out real soon. I mean, one of the coolest things that happened after a talk like this at DerbyCon is a guy reached out on Twitter and he said, I've written my third blog, Jason. 17 more to go. About 10 in, he's like, all right, I'm on my 10th vlog. This is not easy. I understand, but I'm excited for you to hit that 20. And I will let you know that he's never written me to let me know that he hit his 20. And I'm not saying you don't release those 7, you don't release those 12, because it could be something that's really helpful to other people. And it could be, absolutely. Release them if you get to 7 and you can't go any further. Just put them out there so that people can learn from them. But if this is something that you want to do consistently and as a career or as a way of giving back, then it has to become scheduled and it has to become something that you create regardless of how difficult it is. Now, hopefully, I haven't killed your desire to want to do this, but I've given you a perspective on how to move forward. Live presentations. If you've gotten a chance, man, I hope you saw Derek or Jeff's this morning. I hope you were tuning into the ones this afternoon, yesterday. Or is that, I am hopefully, there's 48 of you that are currently listening to this. I hope you decide to submit a CFP for a future talk, especially at Wildwest Hacking Fest. We'd love to have you give a presentation, that you give a presentation, that you submit to do that. And it's going to do a lot of things, like we already talked about, is that it's going to force you to do the research. It's going to force you to learn something, but it's also going to force you to get out of your comfort zone. Because when I did the raise your hand if you're shy, if you actually raised your hand, that, there is that, I got to be brave. There's a talk coming up. I got to get up on stage. I have to share this information. And that's going to give you an opportunity to grow and stretch yourself as a person. But how do you give a live presentation? Go watch the video on how to give a live presentation. It's 30 minutes long, and it will break it down for you from the hook, beginning, middle, climax, and end, how to structure your talk, and even how to take a blank sheet of paper, because I hate blank sheets of paper, because blank sheets of paper are laughing at me, and they're like, you don't have an idea. I'm like, shut up. So the way I've gotten around that is I just write the word hook, beginning, middle, climax, and end on a blank sheet of paper, and I start filling in those sections. And then as I start filling in those sections, the hook is, here's my question to the audience. The beginning is, here's the journey that I went on to learn and to know more about this topic. Here's the middle, here's the pitfalls and the highs and the lows of doing that research and figuring out this new thing. Climax is how it applies to the audience. Because if you give a talk and you don't tell the audience how this applies to you, then that's just a terrible talk. Because the people just sat up there and just watched you just ramble on about something you thought was cool, but it doesn't apply to them. And so the climax is, how does it apply to the audience? And then the end is try to inspire, try to give someone a takeaway, and try to wrap up everything that was most important in your talk. So tell a story. If you don't know how to give a talk, and this, because the whole world just shut down right now because of a pandemic, but if you're watching this recording and things have gotten better, then I want you to join a local Toastmasters club. So Toastmasters is a place where you can go and speak. It's a pretty safe space for you to go and speak. There are very casual Toastmasters groups. There's more strict, with like sergeant of arms type Toastmasters groups. So try a couple out in your community. But what I want you to do is join a Toast. If you want to become a better speaker, if you want to get up on stage, if you want to give presentations internally or to the public, if you want to do a Twitch stream, anything that you want to do, that you want to use your voice and talk to an audience, then I highly recommend joining a Toastmasters. And this will be a place where you can practice, you can come up with talks. They have a pathway. I think it's even called pathway. Yeah, it's pathways. Pathways is, your first talk is the icebreaker talk. The second talk is an informative talk. The third talk is a persuasive talk. The fourth talk is this type of talk. The fifth talk is you give the talk, you get feedback, then you give the talk again. This is an organization that can help you become a better speaker and presenter. I really like Toastmasters. I became a better speaker and presenter just by doing it every single time in the classroom, and by the students having laptops and just trying to figure out how can I hack their brains to get them to care more about me, researching and learning about how human beings interpret information as you're teaching it to them. So I wanted to become a better presenter and speaker. Like, that was my goal, and that was my job and my profession. So if this isn't your job and profession, then I would just join a local Toastmasters, and that would be the way that you can start learning how to be a better presenter and speaker. CFP submissions. So once again, so now that you have an idea for a talk, or you see places that you want to give talks, and right now there is no place to give a talk unless it's virtually, because everyone is postponed. I'm a sponsor of all these events, and I'm just getting the emails right now of like, and we're postponed, and we're canceling, and we're postponed. Right now, it might be few and far between for the CFP submissions, but when it is time to present, or if you sort of want to do a virtual con, and more virtual cons start popping up, because we are doing a webcast this upcoming Monday on how to run a virtual con, and it's just going to be a brain dump of all the things that we learned over the last 7 or 8 days. If you submit your CFP, submit it like this, and the only place I ever get rejected to speak is at marketing events. The only place I ever get rejected to speak is at marketing events. And really, it's because I'm not paying to present in marketers, unless you're kind of in the club. And I know what you're thinking. You got to be in the InfoSec club, which is why B-Sides is so important to the InfoSec industry. It's giving new voices and new speakers a chance to get up and present. So when you submit your CFP, follow those 5 rules: the hook, beginning, middle, climax, and end. So it's here's the question to the audience. Here's the journey I went on. Here's what I learned, or what I will learn by doing the research. Here's how it applies to the audience, and and then you sum it all up. All the CFPs I've ever submitted in the InfoSec industry have been accepted. And I think it's because it follows a pretty simple, like, the person who's reading it, think about the person reading it. That's the audience. Is that this person's getting like 1,000 CFPs, and they're like, which one do I take? And it's the one that's just broken down in the easiest way for them to interpret and read. If you send a stack of papers, they might go. So it's that 5 breakdown. Because of my time today, I won't be able to get to do this, so I'm going to jump over to marketing. And if you're wondering what slides I just went through, in my live version of this, I run through someone's idea, and then we actually run through all the ways to create that idea. Do we do live versus capture? Do we build a studio? Do we do screen capture? Actually, I will do these, and I'll just run through them a little faster. Tip: if you make a video, or you make a how-to video, don't remake it. So if you make it, don't remake it. It's a part of that 20 that you're creating. And the reason why you don't remake it is because just make the next one, and just make the next one after that, and they will get better as time goes on. But if you're trying to make the best video, right, like, oh, let me record that, let me get different lighting, let me get this, let me get that, let me get this, and just keep making the same video over and over again, then you will have one video. So make 20 videos that increasingly get better instead of making one that you're trying to make perfect. So don't redo. I had a photographer friend of mine that we would go out and do these photo shoots, and I keep touching my face, even though I have. So we had this photographer that I would work with, and whenever we'd get done with the shoot, we do the photo shoot, we have the models, we have this, we have the client, we have the product, we have whatever it is that we're shooting. When we would get done with the shoot, he would always reach out and say, like, hey, can we shoot that again? I'm like, no, we can't shoot it again. And the reason why is because on the drive home, he kept thinking about, well, I would have moved the light here. I would have done this differently. I would have done this. I would have had this different angle. And you can't go back and redo it. You can just make improvements for the next one. If you're doing post-production, the tip here is to outsource. If you're doing your own podcast, don't be the editor of your podcast. Give that over to someone else and let them edit it. And if it costs you $50, then that's the cost of doing the work that you're doing. Now, you might make that back up by sponsors. You might make that work back by doing a Patreon. I think that's how it's called. So you might make that money back by doing, raising funds through subscribers on Twitch. There's all kinds of ways to make money through doing streaming and doing content creation. And when I took that class a couple of weeks ago, I was dumbfounded by the economics of live streaming and Patreon and things like that. So that's something for you to keep in mind, is that if people are giving you money, then take that money and outsource the editing of the content that you're creating to others. And really the reason is because the sound of your voice. It's the sound of your voice. When you're trying to edit yourself, you're constantly critiquing yourself. And so you can't really get the edit that you need because you hear you. But if you give it over to someone else, like someone said, I sound like Ryan Reynolds. I don't think I sound like Ryan Reynolds, except when I watch a Ryan Reynolds movie, I'm like, I see it. But when you hand that over to someone else, they don't have that same bias that you have. Same thing, like you should never edit your own photos. You shouldn't edit things like that, because you will find all your flaws and it won't be perfect. So outsource. Distribution. This is that tip from earlier, 20 finish before you go. There's so many places for you to distribute your content. I'm pretty sure you can find a blog a blog on how to distribute blogs, a webcast on how to distribute webcasts, a podcast on how to distribute podcasts. So if this is something that interests you, there are so many people that have created content about distribution. But what I wanted here was iTunes. It's about reviews. It's about having a concentrated amount of reviews in a short period of time. So if at some point, if you're doing webcasts and you decide to take those webcasts, the big piece of content, and then break it into podcast, then maybe you ask your Discord audience, hey, if this is something that you really like, I'm now putting it on iTunes for you to download as a podcast. Could you please go and review it? So that way we can show up higher on the rankings. And by showing up higher on the rankings, more people find it, more people listen to it. A tip for promotion: join forces, email lists, social media. One of the easiest interns to find these days is a social media intern. And it really is, because anyone in college feels like they're a social media expert. And a lot of times they are. They're really good because they've grown up with it. And it's just now, can they apply it to business, and can they apply it to making money and things like that? But when it comes to social media, most of you are experts already. You've been doing social media for a long time. But if I have time, I'll show you some tips. The email list is important. And if you're like, email, Jason, email, Jason. Yeah. Create a MailChimp account or a MailChimp or a Constant Contact. So as you're getting started, create a MailChimp account, create a Constant Contact account, and start building up your email list. Because when it's time to go live, you will announce it in your Discord. You'll send an email out to your email list, and then people show up, and then it keeps building that community. And the thing about emails, it's really easy to share. We generally get 400 new people to our Black Hills webcast almost every single time. So there's an average of 400 new people every single webcast that we do. And those were not people we emailed. They may have seen it on social media or something like that. But for the most part, it was someone that has been to a webcast before. They like our webcast, and then they forward it to a colleague and say, you need to come to this. What's cool is that my wife works for an organization that is in information security. And when we send out the Black Hills email on Mondays, she will get that email, not from me, but from a colleague at work that says, hey, this looks like a really good topic. We should all check it out. And then she'll come up and she's like, got another email from another colleague that says you got a webcast coming up. And I was like, I know, right? She's like, mm-hmm. I was like, ah. So it's funny. Join forces. So if you find somebody that's currently doing what you do, or they're in the same sphere as you and they have a better audience, or I don't want to say better, they have a more robust and bigger audience, maybe you can join forces with them. And as your audience grows, they can get some of the audience over there. If you didn't know, a couple years ago, they started YouTube Studios. So YouTube Studios was a place in California and Los Angeles. It still exists. It's pretty cool. And YouTube Studios, what YouTube did was they found these YouTubers that had 100,000, 200,000, a million subscribers who were in their house, like right now, like me. And all of a sudden I have like 100,000 subscribers. And YouTube would reach out to me and say, like, would you like to move to California and do this at YouTube Studios? So a lot of YouTubers moved from all over the country to California, to Los Angeles, and they recreated their bedroom at YouTube Studios. So it became a set. So it's the same thing that you would see, 6 months ago, but they would recreate it at YouTube Studios. But now they had professional cameras, they had professional lights, they had professional production equipment and post-production equipment, and they were helping them crank out their videos, and YouTube would keep half the revenue. And so what was cool about that is let's say I'm a YouTuber that has 1 million subscribers, and 10 feet next to me is another YouTuber in a different, edit suite or a different this. I would get the chance to meet them, and then we would start doing cross-promotional videos where I'm now hanging out with that YouTuber, and where our subscribers are now crisscrossing each other. So that's all to say, if we Black Hills have been looking for presenters at Wild West Hacking Fest that have given great presentations that we think would be good for the Black Hills audience, or for the Wild West Hacking Fest webcast audience that we're going to have here in the next couple of months. And so we're going to reach out to some people, and if we don't reach out to you, I'm sorry. It's just we didn't think that talk would resonate with the audience yet, or that type of talk, or you may need to improve your speaking skills a little bit, or your gear. So if you're like, what about me? So it's just may not be ready yet, because it is thousands of people, and we want to make sure that you're good to go for thousands of people. And so we're going to look for other people that want to work with us, and we want to work with them to cross-promote that way. 14 minutes to go. Marketing. The 3 I've been living by Jason Blanchard for like the last 20 years, have been living by these 3 steps for marketing. And the first one is to get people to know you exist, give them a reason to care, and amaze them once they do. And it just comes down to, if people don't know you exist, then they can't even make a decision about you. So I will. There's 47 of you right now listen to this, and there's going to be a recording later, and people listen to the recording. But you listening to this right now, there's a certain amount of people that know you exist, and that's your circle. And you can reach out and get to know more people. Right now, there's a ton of people that don't know you exist, and that's fine. But once they know you exist, then they can make a decision if they like you or not. So if they want to hire you, if they want to listen to your content, they want to, so until they know you exist, you have to introduce yourself. And so that might be, you post stuff on social media, you show up to a con, you give a presentation, you come to the Discord channel and you introduce yourself. There's an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to people. Now, they may not care. I tried to do a comedy in a room full of 1,000 people. Most of them did not care. So you have to give them a reason to care. And so there was a couple of people who were close to the audience that heard what I said, thought it was funny, and they started to care. Now, once they started, like as they were having a conversation with someone else, and actually, this is kind of interesting. And then I got a chance to do some more jokes. And by the end of my set, there was a good 40 to 50 people in the front that were laughing and they were engaged. They didn't know I existed until I got up on that stage. They didn't care until I started making them laugh. And they didn't really laugh like I wanted them to until I got them over that part where I amazed them. Because people have an expectation of you. And when you can exceed that expectation is when you can amaze somebody. Not saying to lower people's expectations so they can amaze them, but no, don't do that. Get people to know you exist, give them a reason to care, and amaze them once they do. All right. Audience. Engagement's way better than views. Hey, kitty. I'm up here. Engagement is way better than views. What I mean by that is if you have 100 people that follow you on Twitter, but only one person ever likes your tweets, well, then really you only have one person. The other 99 are most likely bots or just people that don't care about the content that you're putting out. And that's fine. Once again, it's the subset of the larger audience, the people that care. But once you find those people that care, then you hope that they engage. And so you're creating stuff. I heard a couple years ago in marketing, I'm 41, there's people coming up, there's people younger than me, is that millennial marketers will post something on social media. If no one clicks on it in the first 30 seconds, they delete it. And then they rewrite it. They change the image. They adjust it. They put it back out again. They get a like. They're like, all right, cool. Like that is how much millennials are tuned in to engagement. Because they're like, if I put this out there, no one responds to it, then why am I even putting it out there? And so what you're looking for is engagement. So let's say you have 1,000 people who like care over time about what you're doing, but only 10 of them show up when you do a live webcast. Then really what you have is 10 people. And so it's not about caring about the overall number, it's about the engagement number. And that will grow as time goes on, hopefully. Repeat, build an audience. Audience questions are gold. Yes! I'm glad I got to this tip. So I'm doing a webcast right now. And I'm going to scroll right now through the questions. And there's a Discord channel and things like that. And people have been sending me questions throughout. If you want to know what to do your next webcast on, it's the audience questions from your last webcast. So use the audience to help you start crowdsourcing the content to make next. So if you do a webcast and all of a sudden 4 or 5 people ask you a similar question, then maybe you write a blog post on that. And at the end of your blog post, you lead that back to the overall webcast. You break that webcast into 5 different chunks. You can now link those different chunks. Each one of those can be its own blog, where you take the transcript from the webcast and you put it actually in the blog itself. You can pay people to write transcripts for you, or we recently learned that if you bring up Google Docs, and you take a headphone or so and you stick it next to the microphone on your computer and you turn Google like talk to text on, it will give you a transcript of your video. It's not 100%, you got to go in and make some adjustments, but it's pretty damn good. And so that can give you a transcript of the talk that you gave, and then that can be converted into text, and then that text will be SEO capable, and so more people come to your website, and then that will lead them to your upcoming live webcast, and so they funnel. So your audience questions are the fodder or the thing that you can do next. I wanted to do a tip before I finish today. I want you all to start liking LinkedIn a lot more. If you can take anything away from today, it's to like LinkedIn if you want to be a content creator. If you are a usual Twitter user, then most likely you're like, LinkedIn? Really? So here's what happened. Twitter became a dumpster fire. So all the people who are like, I don't like dumpster fires, I don't like all of this, they went to LinkedIn. They really did. They went to LinkedIn, and that's where they want to get content. So much so, I'm going to show you. So Black Hills had a LinkedIn account for a long time. And you can see the comings and goings. But I want to show you this range. Oh, Kitty found me. All right. So in March of last year, we averaged about 266 people on our LinkedIn. Well, we started putting out content from the content library. So remember the content library? We took all the old content, stuff that was so relevant. We built out a content schedule. We had someone help us post that stuff to social media. We said, use this number on this day. Here's the image. Here's the text. Here's all these things. And all of a sudden, the engagement just went through the roof, where we're adding like 3,000 people or so a month. And if you go down here, you can take a look at your engagement rate versus others. And I'm not saying that I look at this often just because I'm competitive, but you can see your company versus other companies and your new followers versus theirs and how many updates you have and what your engagement rate is versus them. And it's really nice that active counter measures in Black Hills is at 8. Yeah, it's a really good number. It's pretty cool. Like the other people. So by posting content, like all of a sudden our numbers started shooting up. And guess what? Those people who were now following the Black Hills website started coming to our live webcast. And then those people started sharing it with their friends. And then those people started showing up. Hey, Kitty. Those people started showing up. So LinkedIn is awesome. And one of the really cool features on LinkedIn that I want to show you is, and I didn't know this existed until Gary Vee put out like a PowerPoint of like 290 pages recently. And I read all of them. It was great. But there's this feature inside LinkedIn, and I want to show it to you. For all of you that have been presenting this week and are speakers, if you go here to share a document, so you got this, create a post, you can make a picture, you can do a video, or you can do in a document. So I'm going to choose this from my desktop over here. Thank you, compromised. So if this is your talk that you gave, and so Jeff is here and some of the other speakers are here, you can upload your talk. So I think here, and I'm not going to upload this one. I'm just going to show you. What it does is it turns your talk into 28 pieces of content. And so now people can go through and take a look at your talk. And then what you can do is go back. So up here, you can link to where it is on YouTube. So if there's a link for it on YouTube, you can post it here. You can say, here's the talk. Here it is. If you want to download the slides, you can go to my website. And on my website, you can download the slides if you want the PowerPoint version. But you can start using this. The engagement rates for these right here are ridiculous. If my normal post has an engagement rate of like 5%, these have an engagement rate of like 46 to 56%. And what happens is, in LinkedIn's world, the algorithm sees all the people looking through the slides and converts that to like, well, your engagement rate's massively high, so let's show this to a large audience. And so it keeps showing it to a larger audience. And so some of the ways that we've built up our LinkedIn over the last couple of months is by sharing the slides for the presentations. All right, in conclusion, we're at the in conclusion slide. In conclusion, thank you. Thank you for being here. You do a workshop and you ask people to show up and you say, this is what it's about. And you showed up, and I appreciate that. And so in conclusion, I have tried to live by this, never deny teaching someone the knowledge that I have in my head. I love being a teacher. It's one of the things I love most, was being a teacher for 9 years, but I realized that I wasn't growing as a person anymore because I was teaching the same topics. I was covering the same materials. And so what I decided to do was quit my job and sell my comic book store because I wasn't growing and just do something different. And I've learned a ton of stuff over the last 9 years that I've been doing things different. And so I'm looking at teaching again, but now it's with 18 years of knowledge. And so I am excited about teaching again. I'm excited that I got a chance to teach you here today. So thank you for listening. And I hope that the one thing that you take away from this is that you have knowledge in your brain and that you have the opportunity to share it with others. And it may be virtual because the world that we're living in right now might be a little, what's the word? Isolated, social distancing. And so we're going to need each other more than ever and connect in ways and share our knowledge in ways. And it might be virtual and streaming. To recap, develop your voice. It's going to take some time to develop your voice. But as you develop your voice, you also have to get used to hearing your voice. And so as you develop your voice, it's going to take time. It's going to take a little while to get over that imposter syndrome and over the sound of your own voice to make something. Content chunking. Can I make something big and break it down into the individual pieces so that way I don't have to make this thing and just keep making more things and keep making more things? Can I take a big piece of thing, turn it into smaller pieces? So that way I don't have to keep doing research. I can do this research once and turn it into all these and then go research something else. Career advancement. If you do any of the things I talk about today, your career will be advanced because you will start becoming a subject matter expert on topics. You will be able to start doing this. People start looking to you as a thought leader, even though you don't consider yourself one, and it will be a way for you to start advancing your career. Networking. I will encourage you right now, get up on stage. It is immediate permission for everyone in the audience to come talk to you. Like if you don't know who to talk to at a con, you can always go talk to a presenter or a speaker because you heard them talk and now you have something to start talking about. So by presenting, it's instantaneous networking. And give back. And with that, you can find me in Discord for questions. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to kill the presentation and I will see you in Discord.